honestly, I've been learning so much about how to play blind, watching Sochi work.
Bruce is a very convincing sighted. Plays
We do
sighted
end
really
our
well.
rehearsal days saying, we say good blinding, good sighting.
Sighting, yeah.
Because I'm really trying to convince people that I can see better than I can.
Let's get this show on the road. Wherever you are, get in your car and come on down, enjoy a show. If it's your first time, well, jump on in. By the end of this drive, you'll be a shavy in. No, let's get this show on the road.
Hey, Kelly.
Hey, Spike.
I just wanted to say how much I'm enjoying the process of getting to know the work of our guests.
Yeah, and we received a lot of feedback from our audience. Just as a reminder, if anyone wants to reach out and either give us feedback on what is working for you, or if there are things that you want to hear, write us at podcast@shawfest.com. We read all of the emails that you send us, so we really appreciate the fact that this is becoming a two-way street.
And that's really what the Shaw Festival has been focusing on, as this idea that it goes two ways. Theater is two ways. We've been talking about two-way theater for a long time. The idea that you can come here to have a shared experience. And what we have been identifying or working to identify is, what is human connection? How do we define that and embody that as a practice, as a company? And I think that really came forward during COVID, how necessary human connection is for our survival. We're looking at social isolation. We're looking at isolating technologies that are making it difficult for us to feel comfortable around each other even, which has been also something that has been coming to the forefront of not only how we produce theater, but also our extended programming that we're developing. Yeah.
Do you have any examples of that?
Well, the Theater of Medicine program that we've been putting together here is looking at how can we help physicians and surgeons, health practitioners, understand what human connection is and the value that that brings to their patients. And so how do we as theater practitioners, how do we understand human connection? And when you look at that, there are so many transferable skills that you can not only practice, but you can get good at, and they can become part of your whole system of communication. And so with the Theater of Medicine program, we have actually partnered with the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons, and we are accredited with the University of Toronto with the medical school.
And what does that mean for those Luddites pointing at myself?
So every physician, every surgeon across Canada has to have a Royal College certificate. They have to be certified. And there's 25 credits that you have to have as continuing professional development credits every year. And we at the Shaw Festival now offer 11 credits to come down and learn and grow as a physician, as a surgeon. And what we really focus on in the medical term world are non-technical skills. So those would be some people might call those soft skills. But we're really trying to change that language to non-technical skills, because it's good to know how to put a needle in someone's arm. You must know those things. That's a technical bit of knowledge. But the non-technical part is, how do you help that particular patient relax if they are really in a state of fear or pain and anger, frustration, and how do you actually work with that through even just simple things of how you sit next to them and how you use your voice can help to ease. And so learning those little adjustments that can be made, we know that those adjustments work for us in the theater, right? We know that how you use your voice and what your intention is behind those lines of text can really affect and change the air in the space.
That sounds like an incredible initiative. Where can people find out more information if they want to participate and come on board?
Yeah, so we have our shawfest.com. In the Beyond the Stage, you can find the Theater of Medicine, but it's also just shawfest.com/Theater of Medicine.
That's great.
This is where we get to go and talk with Sochi and Bruce about Wait Until Dark. And if we want to talk about every moment of a thriller, of a suspense, that is sort of a great example of exactly how you can change the air by how you walk in the room.
So this is Bruce Horak's first season with the Shaw Festival. He and I share a similar path in this industry. We both grew up in Calgary. We both went to Mount Royal College. We both had our start with the theater community there. And I first saw his work in The Wizard of Oz, where he played the Scarecrow at Alberta Theatre Projects. You might have also seen him in Goblin Macbeth. You'll see him this year in Murder on the Lake. And for you Trekkies out there,
Yes.
I'm looking at you, Spike. He's also in Star Trek, Brave New Worlds.
Oh, it's so exciting. I totally fangirled this conversation. I could not control myself. I tried and it didn't work. And Sochi and I have had a great opportunity to work together in different ways as a movement coach for a lot of the characters. I had the great pleasure of working with her on Candida. She was also in Game of Love and Chance, which was a riot ride, and also The Apple Cart. So I'm very thrilled to have this conversation with her and with Bruce.
Before we hear from them, let's talk to TC about his thoughts on putting Wait Until Dark into the season.
I think our audience really loves a bit of violence and jeopardy. We're obviously quite addicted to danger and twists. There's something very attractive about a play where you're not sure who you can trust. Everyone who comes through the door might be not quite what they seem. So the attraction of this piece for me was that it has a kind of wonderful theatricality. The whole notion of a lady who has quite recently gone blind, having to negotiate a space in front of us in real time. It's not like doing it as a movie where you know that they can cheat anything. The sense of watching someone in this real situation, in this real space, using darkness as a tool, using darkness as a means of salvation. I find that very clever of the writer, and it's a really brilliantly constructed story because you really don't know if she's going to make it or not. Because it's quite a recent play, it's not one of those plays that comes from the period where, well, you know it's all going to be okay. You really don't know if it's going to be okay in this, and I'm not going to tell you. I think one of the great things about the theatre is when you can have an entire audience holding its breath. That's not like watching a movie. Of course, you can make an audience jump with shock in Jaws or Friday the 13th or whatever, but to have an audience holding its breath, waiting to see, and in the same situation as some of the characters being plunged into darkness from light, again, I think that's much richer in the theatre than just watching it in a movie or on the television. And I think it will really be very interesting because it isn't necessarily putting you in the same situation as the characters you sympathise with. So that will be morally quite complicated.
So I grew up in New York City until I was 7, and there were some great after-school programs, some amazing opportunities that my grade 1 class got to go see live theater, operettas for kids and other plays for kids, and I fell deeply in love. And I had one teacher, her name was Ms. Walker, and she did an after-school playmaking class where we put together a show that she wrote. And she was amazing. And she was the person who told my mom, Sochi has presence. She should keep doing this.
And how did you come across the Shaw Festival?
So, okay. My dad's American. My mom's Canadian. We lived in New York City roughly until I was about 7. And then we moved to Ottawa. And that was a huge shock, culture shock. I hated it. It prompted a deep desire to move back to New York City. So I did when I was 17. And it was shortly after 9/11. And it was just a really difficult time living in New York then. And so as soon as I graduated from that conservatory school that brought me back to New York, I auditioned for Ryerson, now Toronto Metropolitan University. And so that's what brought me to Toronto. And it was through being in the theater program there that I was introduced to the Shaw Festival.
And what about you, Bruce? When did the theater bug just sort of go, yep, got ya?
Probably pretty early on. I come from a pretty artistic family. My dad was a high school English teacher and a drama teacher, and mom's a writer and a singer and dancer and general roustabouts. 3 older brothers who are all involved in the arts, and we've just kind of always put on little plays and skits. My first memory of feeling the buzz of an audience was Mrs. Burchell's grade 1 class. We did a Christmas concert and sang the Christmas song. And we were all wearing letters from Christmas, and I had the C, and I would do a little dance with my C and spin it around. And that got a laugh, and then it subsequently got me fired and put in the back of the class as a Christmas tree for that show. And I realized that this was probably a path I needed to explore. Yeah, a bit of a class clown growing up, and theater just kind of made sense.
And where in the world were you when this was happening?
Born and raised in Calgary. Eventually, after high school, I went to Mount Royal College in Calgary. And that program led directly into Shakespeare in the Park. So I did 4 or 5 years at Shakespeare in the Park in Calgary. And then my winters I would spend touring with Quest Theatre, which was Calgary's children's theatre. Yeah, I really cut my teeth doing TYA.
This is your first season here at the Shaw Festival.
Yeah.
Have you encountered it before? Has this been a sort of a destination place you always wanted to be? Or actually it was like, nah, I don't think it's fine. I don't need it.
Well, honestly, I think, when did I first hear about it? Actually, at Mount Royal College, we had a theater history class taught by Tom Bessie, and he did a little section on the history of Canadian theater and the founding of a bunch of the festivals, Blythe, Stratford, Shaw. And I'd heard about all of these festivals, but I was really interested in the history of children's theater and TYA and really directed my focus into working for Quest Theatre and all of that was like, yeah, it's kind of it's just a different stream. We're of the same river, the same path. But yeah, and honestly, coming up through Calgary, I never really thought that this was a place I was going to end up.
I would love to talk to you about Wait Until Dark, and maybe between the two of you can help to share with our folks listening. If I haven't seen the movie with Audrey Hepburn, what is the story about?
Oh, are we going to get into spoilers here, or are we going to keep people in there?
Ooh.
I think we better be careful how we tread.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it would be great to just get some insight as to what would draw me to buy a ticket and to come down to see this show.
Well, it's a thriller. The character of Susan is a recently blind woman in 1944, Greenwich Village, New York. She lives in a basement apartment with her photographer husband. And there are people who think that she has something that they really want.
What's some of your thoughts on that, Bruce? What would you add?
It's the story. No, I was going to try to put it from my character's point of view, but that's all spoilers.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, who do you... Oh, are we allowed to know who you play? No, we're not allowed to know who Bruce plays. Okay.
No.
Right.
There's
No.
He's an enigma. The character of Harry Rote. He's just listed as in the program. So at least that much you'll know is that I play Rote, but he's very much an enigma. And it's funny because playing the antagonist in this story, oftentimes when you play the villain, like you have to get into their mindset and figure them out and go, well, they don't think they're bad. They think they're doing right, or whatever other mantra that you have to use in order to get into those villain mindsets. But he's so far outside any human reasoning that I'm, I kind of come up against that a bit of like, yeah, this is a plot point and it has to happen. But what would possibly motivate a person to do that other than, I don't know, pure evil? Is that a spoiler? Sochi? I think that's a spoiler.
I think the enjoyment of other people's discomfort, intense discomfort.
Yeah.
I think he enjoys it.
Yeah, that's it.
And so maybe we can go into that a little bit because it's hard to play suspense. You could give a lot away very easily by kind of playing into the situation or like a little eyebrow move or a little like, oh no. So How is it working in rehearsals right now to get into those mindsets, to build those suspenseful moments?
I'm finding that really have to trust Sanjay, the director. Really have to trust his viewing of the show. He's outside of it. He's asking for beats and extensions in moments that my impulse as a class clown is to I'm going to motor through that and be a bit arch. And he's like, no, take a moment here. There's longer in this. And I think that's playing into the music of a good suspense. There's a different music to it than there is to comedy, farce, or, just even drama. Suspense has got something entirely different, and it feels like what we're doing now as we kind of move into our last week in the hall. I don't know when this is airing, but it's like the instrument is getting really well tuned. And we ran the first act in its entirety on Sunday, and it could really start to hear, oh yeah, that's where it's really in tune. Is like the notes are all being hit and they're being held for a certain amount of time. I'm excited to see how it's going to play in front of an audience, because they're the final piece of orchestration that we need for the suspense of it.
I'd say too that rhythm, as you say, the music of it. So this particular script that we're working with is an adaptation of Frederick Knott's original play. Jeffrey Hatcher adapted it in 2013 for the Geffen Playhouse. And it's so well written. So trusting how good of a job he's done, it's a well tabulated working clock. The rhythm itself of what he's written works incredibly well, which is great, so that we aren't left having to manufacture suspenseful moments because the situation itself is so intense. And the text that we've received as actors is so sharp. At the same time, in the rehearsal hall, before we even get the audience, which I agree is sort of the final element, we still have yet to have our full soundscape. And because this play is so much about light and dark, as in literal light and darkness on stage, as well as sound, the sounds of the world, those elements will ratchet up tension. There's sort of an auditory story that's being told alongside us and with us, and that does a great job of seducing the audience into places of calm and then giving them a free fall. So when is there sound and when is there silence? When does any kind of composed music, John Zosky is the sound designer, that gives you a sense of tone, sense of place, atmosphere, as well as what to think or feel about something? And when does that get taken away so that the audience has no idea and they're in free fall? And it works in their unconscious brain, and that can be deeply scary. So all of these elements coming together and branching off from just a basic situation that is deeply terrifying. It's a home invasion story.
Starting to feel scared already as you're talking. I was like, oh, my heart's getting... I will come and see the show, I promise. But I might just be watching with my ears plugged and my eyes covered. Yeah. So I'm really curious, Sochi, playing the lead in this play, you have a ton of stage time. This is really centering around this woman's experience of this very intensive situation and what's happening to her and her world. What's been some of the research you've done in terms of finding this person, and how have you gone through that process?
So Tim Carroll put me in touch with one of the Shaw Festival's board members. Her name is Jodie Porter, and she's this wonderful woman who has been visually impaired most of her life, and in the last number of years lost her sight entirely. We have had some incredible conversations, and she's put me in touch with an orientation and mobility instructor, whom I've also had the great fortune of conversing with. I am a sighted actor, and I am playing a character who is not, which it's not totally comfortable, actually, to be doing this.
There's a lot of conversations here about how do we make those decisions in terms of who plays what, but also the incredible opportunity for us to be connected to these individuals like Jodie, to be able to gain insight and knowledge from them in this process.
Mhm.
That must be really incredible.
It has been. I mean, she's hugely generous. So there's the researching of the visual impairment of the character of Susan, and Bruce has been a huge resource too, and has also been hugely generous with his insights.
Yeah, what has that relationship been? I mean,
It's funny. I was trying to think of when you and I first had our phone call.
It was over a year
I can picture
ago.
exactly where I was. Yeah. Sochi reached out to me about the role and about being a visually impaired performer in the arts, and raised some concerns about approaching the role given the climate. And oddly enough, I had encountered something rather similar about a year before, where I'd been offered the role of Richard III, and felt that because I am visually impaired myself, but my visual impairment can at times appear to be invisible, and was I visible enough of a disabled person to take on the role of Richard? So it was complicated, and so Sochi and I got talking quite extensively about the politic of it, but also how do you lead into this with comfort
And respect,
and absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. To do it with all the respect in the room, and I feel like that was the beginning of our conversation around visual impairment and you doing your research, but also finding a way through in the hall. And I've been learning so much about how to play blind, watching Sochi work.
Bruce is a very convincing sighted. Plays
We
sighted
do end
really
our
well.
rehearsal days saying, we say good blinding, good sighting.
Sighting, yeah.
Because I'm really trying to convince people that I can see better than I can.
This is so interesting. So at the very beginning, it was one of our first rehearsals in the rehearsal hall, and the Carps department at the Shaw Festival have gone sort of above and beyond to try to provide us the closest facsimile we can to the set.
you actually have a mini version of the whole set
That's
in the
right.
rehearsal hall.
Which helps
That's extraordinary.
so much.
Never had that.
No, because
much.
tape
Oh,
only
yeah.
goes so tape on the floor. Already we're miming doors and it's driving me crazy. But I remember, Bruce, you had a sort of a tour that I crashed of the set. And there are elements that are present, such as a telephone and some lamps and other things. And then I remember at the end of the first day that we were up on our feet, there was a moment where I think Brucey said, how am I doing? It's a sighted person or something like that. And I said, it's really good, except you keep pointing to the telephone and the telephone's not there.
It's over there.
It's not, and I think Brucey said, oh yeah, I haven't actually found the telephone yet, which
No.
it was, you had me fooled. You had me totally fooled. I would not have known that there were still elements that hadn't quite come into your
the vagueness
consciousness.
of the general area. Yeah, it's true. And honestly, having the set in the rehearsal hall from day one has made it so much easier for me. And it's one of those things where you don't know the accommodation you need until it's given to you. I don't know what to ask for. People are like, what can we do for you on this set or whatever? It's like, I don't really know until I get there. But one of the things that has been hugely helpful is having the actual set. I mean, because there's a lot of stairs and levels to navigate that oftentimes in quote-unquote standard rehearsal practice and that 2-week rehearsal practice that you mentioned before.
You just kind of march on the spot as you're going up the stairs.
Yeah. Well, the 10 out of 12-hour days that we would do, I would come in early just to walk the set. So I would have it in a little bit in my body, especially if there was stairs or levels on it. So I'd spent all this time kind of getting one thing into my body and then throw it into whack during tech. Whereas I feel like, I don't have to worry about that now. When we transfer this thing onto the actual festival stage, that learning curve is already flattened, which is really great. It makes me look sighted, and that's really my only goal, to be heard and to appear sighted.
Well, you already can hear Bruce's beautiful, mellifluous voice.
Mellifluous.
This is getting fancy.
Wow.
Come for Bruce's voice. Just come for Bruce's voice.
This is great. So I wanted to crack into this little nut about improv because, Bruce, you have been working in and around the improvisation world for a long time.
Yeah.
And Sochi, this was a very new thing for you when we did Game of Love and Chance a few years ago. I'm curious about the skills that cross over when you're doing a straight play. There was obviously the spontaneity in improv, but what are some of those skills that would come over and that you would use actively when inside a play like this?
Well, it certainly comes in very handy in the rehearsal hall as you're experimenting and playing with things and responding and listening to your partner, because I'll learn the lines and I'll kind of learn what the other person's going to say, but it never comes out of Sochi's mouth the way it comes out of my head. So there's that, being present and responding in there. Once you get into the run of the play, however, that's kind of where improvisation to me kind of takes a bit of a back seat. There might be variances in cadence or, a response from the audience or whatever. So there's still an openness and a receptiveness there, but I feel like I switch over to a different rung on the wheel of creativity. That is one of practice, method, aiming for consistency, but being open to, kind of the fluidity of the day. It's kind of finding freedom within the confines of a structure. That makes...
Yes.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense. I'd say that the Game of Love and Chance that happened in 2023 was the first improvised show I've ever done. And I did it alongside The Apple Cart, which is by Shaw. And that experience made me think, why ever do anything other than an improvised show and a structured show at the same time? Because it opens up those receptors, that desire to continue to play and delve deep, which is what I always want to bring. And as you said earlier in the conversation, Alexis, these are long runs. These are very long runs, and how to make it different every night, how to bring your full self and presence. The thing that is true for improvised theater, true for scripted theater, true for all live performance is presence. What I have learned so far, working with Rebecca Northen, Bruce's creative partner, and with Bruce in rehearsals for Murder on the Lake, which will be the improvised show this season, is about how to be present, truly present with each other, and to add that element to a situation where you do know what's going to come next. You do know what the next line is, but to really invite yourself to stay in the place of not knowing is what makes live theater so fucking exciting. So I think they feed into each other really well.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Because it is that feeling when you're on stage of not sounding like you know the words that are going to come out of your mouth. And that idea of that present moment, there is a kind of a false amnesia that you need to kind of go, it's just going to come out spontaneously. It's just that the words are going to be in this order every time.
Right.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And that's where the discipline, it's a different muscle. I agree. It's a completely different muscle and a different kind of discipline and a different sort of rigor to know that text so well so that that's the only thing that could possibly come out of your mouth. And then you can enter a different place of play where that structure really does give you freedom. And hopefully we'll get to a point, because we have the luxury of a longer rehearsal period, we'll get to a point where the element of the audience, who is always different, and who we are, as Bruce was saying, is different from day to day, can fly. We can just take off in a different way.
Okay, one other question and then we'll wrap it up. Bruce, I am such a massive Star Trek nerd, it's stupid. And I just have to fangirl a little bit.
All right.
Because you were the first blind actor on Star Trek.
That's right. Yeah. I hold that distinction.
Yeah. When did you do this?
This was during the pandemic. So in December of 2020, I was cast to play Lieutenant Hemmer on Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And he was the chief engineer on the Starship Enterprise in the pre-Kirk days. Yeah, it was quite a distinction. Initially, I thought it was going to be a couple of episodes, but he ended up getting written as kind of a fan favorite. So I got to go to the premiere in New York. Yeah.
That's great.
Layered under acres of prosthetic makeup, you'll never recognize me.
Except that voice, right?
Except he sounds a bit like this guy.
I'll also point out that I think, I could be wrong, but I think Bruce might also be the first visually impaired actor on the Shaw Festival stage ever in its history.
Wow.
That's a big deal too.
There you have it.
This is very exciting. And you do a lot of advocacy work, right?
I do, yeah.
I wanted to just tap into this incredible project you have going that's leading to a documentary on the paintings, the portraits that you're doing. Could you just share us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes, I'm working on a documentary called Boldly Going, which follows me in my quest to complete 1,000 portraits. I'm nearing the finish line. I've painted 750 portraits, started with one-on-one sittings, eventually leading online, etc. But I'm moving towards 1,000, and my goal with the last 250 portraits is to sit and paint the portraits and learn the stories, share the stories through the documentary of people who have overcome adversity in their quest to lead a creative life. And for myself, answer the question of why lead a creative life, because I've been doing that, but also it seemed the most obvious step in this rather extensive portrait painting process, which started in 2011, initially as a way I would paint portraits to show how I see. But what I've ultimately been learning is in doing that, I learn how other people see the world as well. We're looking to get the funding together through Ballinran Entertainment in Stratford, Ontario. They're the lead producers on it. And there you go, boldly going.
Wow.
Fingers crossed.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's very exciting. Just to sort of wrap up our conversation, looping back to the show and people in their cars, they're coming down to the Shaw Festival. They're going to do this double day where they're going to see tons of money and wait until dark.
Ooh.
And they're going to go from, no, I'm just creating this and inventing this idea. But I mean, oh my God, right?
Love
to go
it.
from farce and then get slammed into a thriller like that.
Yes.
It's sort of very different ends of the spectrum of theater experiences. If I was coming in to Wait Until Dark, do you have a little Easter egg you want to share with us? Do you have a little moment, a little something that I maybe would watch for?
Pay attention to the blinds.
The blinds. It's all about the blinds.
Okay, you both said that at the exact same time. I need
The blinds. Very important.
Yes. Venetian blinds,
Okay.
we should say. Venetian blinds.
Venetian.
There's
Venetian
a
blinds.
blind man. There's a man with the blinds, and then there's the blind man. No, there's a blind. Someone in the company is legally blind. Your job,
Who is it?
find them. Who is it?
We're not telling. Okay, fantastic. Well, we will look out for the window Venetian blinds.
That's right.
Yes.
Well, this has been a really fantastic conversation with both of you today and getting a little bit of insight into this fantastic suspense. And I was actually thinking, you don't often see real suspense shows in theater,
No.
like really suspenseful thrillers. They're not often done.
No, that's right. And I don't think I've ever seen anything truly scary on stage in all the theater that I've seen.
Well, thank you both for joining us. We hope that your rest of your rehearsal process and all the tech and everything goes really well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wait Until Dark is playing until October 5th. Tickets available at shawfest.com.
Thank you to Sochi Fried and Bruce Horak for joining us. And thank you, as always, for listening. If you have questions, thoughts, or just want to say hello, drop us a line at podcast@shawfest.com.
Let's Get This Shaw on the Road is hosted by Alexis Milligan and produced by me, Kelly Wong. Original music by Travis Cito. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to us right now. Follow the show to get new episodes in your feed every Thursday. And if you're enjoying it, leave us a review. It helps others discover the show and join in on the conversation.
Next week, we are joined by playwright Will Eno and director Tim Carroll. We'll chat about their bromance and what it's like working together with a living playwright an email away.
We'll see you then.
Let's get this Shaw on the road.